Welcome to STR Stronger Together Meet the Scholar series, episode number 17, featuring Dr. Ruth Aguilera from Northeastern University. She's calling in from Barcelona. I am Zhao Lo from University of Minnesota. I'm a STR executive committee member and also your moderator for today's session. I'm dialing in from Minneapolis. I'm joined by Pitosh Hayton at Monash University, who is our membership engagement committee officer and manager of the session. He is dialing in from Sydney, and Pitosh is 2 a.m. right now, is that right?
Yes, brutal, okay. But totally in for it.
Right, so I think we're just, we're doing our best, doing justice to Ruth's global presence and reputation. Also with us is Samina Karim, also from Northeastern University, our fearless leader and the STR program chair who made the summer series of STR activities possible. So thank you, Samina. So welcome everyone, and especially welcome Ruth. So let me spend a few minutes to introduce Ruth and quickly summarize her achievement today, which is how we usually start this session. So Ruth is a distinguished Karl Friedrich Brodsky Trustee Professor in Global Business at the Lemore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University. She previously, before Northeastern, she was at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for about 15 years, where she was promoted to full professor. In the meanwhile, she also has a visiting professorship in a lot of institutions all around the world. Ruth got her PhD in sociology at Harvard University in 1999. And she has just so many awards and recognition, and I really couldn't fit in to the slide. But let me just highlight a few. So she's a fellow of AIB, as well as a fellow of SMS. She's listed in the world's most influential scientific minds in economics and business by Thomson Reuters. She has received numerous best paper awards, such as candid 2014 best paper in ethics, social responsibility and sustainability. She has received many different research grants, including a major grant by Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation. Ruth has also done a lot of editorial appointments. So she has started recently at AMR as associate editor. Prior to that, she was at OxScience for 6 years as senior editor. In the meanwhile, she was also editor for Corporate Governance International Review. She has done many special issues at the same time. And if you look at the list for various different journals, right? And if you look at the list, she's done one special issue a year since 2015. In the meanwhile, she's on editorial review boards for many journals, and I counted 12 concurrently. So Ruth has also done tons of professional services, including SMS board members since 2016 and re-elected in 2019. Her recent initiative includes gender issues in our profession, which is something that we'll be talking about later. She also served as board members, program chairs, committees for various other academic conferences and organizations. And she published over 100 articles and book chapters, including as well as 2 edited books. The Google citation, as I saw on Sunday, is close to 17,000. Her research, as many of you know, lies in the intersection of strategic org, economic sociology, and global strategy. Her specialty is in international corporate governance, as well as corporate social responsibility. So looking at this, wow, what a run, Ruth, so far. Since most of us are muted, I thought I would, collapse for everyone. All right, let me stop sharing and come back to the big screen. So let me start by saying welcome, Ruth. It's really such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me as well. You know, it's so nice to see so many faces from my colleagues at Northeastern, to all the friends, co-authors, editors, etc. You know, I am in a very rural place in Barcelona, so if the birds bother you, let me know and I'll close the window, and then I'll get very hot because there is no AC. And if I get disconnected, let me know, you know, then I probably connect again and it should work. So I want to say thank you for having me here. You know, I really enjoyed listening to the other people. Thank you, Samina, for being such a force to STR. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm so proud to be your colleague. And of course to Jiao and Pitosh for hosting it, and Asim. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we start these series, as you probably know, by trying to get a bit of understanding of your background and especially what attracted you to academia. So would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Okay, so yeah. All right, so as you know, I am from Barcelona, Spain. So I am Catalan. I feel quite Catalan in addition to European and world citizen. I grew up, you know, I grew up in a very liberal household, almost in a commune, political commune that were fighting against Franco, and even, you know, my parents were really the black sheep in this region of Spain that I come from, which is kind of northern Italy that maybe you're more familiar with, where the area is very much a small, you know, family businesses. But both my parents met, actually my parents met in prison fighting against Franco, and they started this, you know, commune where I grew up, but it was like more of a political place for people to organize against the regime. So I grew up here. This is exactly where I am now. So it's you know, it's very nice. It's outside Barcelona. And then I didn't know what to study. And in high school, I did a test, and they decided that I could either, you know, that I could definitely be a boss, and that, and that I could do either economics or engineering. So I decided to do economics. I didn't want to do business because I thought it would be, well, my parents decided that I shouldn't do business because it would be too narrow. They thought it would be better to do something big, and then I could be, you know, go into politics maybe, or, you know, do something else. So, you know, I went to the University of Barcelona to study economics. You know, if you are from Europe, you just go, you know, you go to the closest place, like, you know, you go where you're supposed to go. You don't, you know, you don't go like to Madrid, like you wouldn't go. Like if you're in Barcelona, you go to the one closer to you. So that's where I went. And so when I was at university, I actually didn't have a lot of money. So I always, you know, I worked, I financed myself. So my job was to translate every single manual for IBM. So if you had a printer and you open a manual, I translated a lot of OS 360, a lot of big machines for IBM, printers, everything. Like, you know, I translated from English to Spanish, and that's how I kind of supported myself. And then, you know, and then I hired people to help me, etc. So that's, but at some point at the end of my first year, and this is really like a life-changing kind of thing, there was this professor, you know, so I was in the Faculty of Economics, but there was this professor who was a Yale PhD, and he had come back to Spain, and he had worked at Yale with Chick Perot and Juan Linz. Can you hear me? Yeah, no? Yeah, I only see Samina and Asim. So every year he hired a couple of undergraduates to his social observation lab. And so, you know, like, so he offered me the job, and I was just very interested in the money at the time. So I said yes. Well, the first thing I asked is, you know, how much are you going to pay me? And and then he hired me, and it turns out that, you know, people, you know, he had hired, other people that he had hired were, for instance, Juan Campos, that had gone to Harvard Economics and then to NYU. Then the person right before me, like, had been Mauro Guillen, who, you know, they collectively decided that he would go to Yale to do a PhD, and then he went to Sloan and then Wharton. And then right after me, you know, like 2 years after me, it was Emilio Castilla. And basically what we did is like, we work in this, you know, social observation lab, but also like he helped us get grants to, so, you know, I went, my first year out of Spain, I went to Berkeley, and they collectively decided that I should take a class on race relations. So I took a class on that. Then I got a grant to go to Lancaster, so for 1 year. And then, you know, on the fourth year, because in Spain economics is 5 years, in the fourth year, it's just like, it was part of it that you would apply for a PhD. So like Mauro was already at Yale. There were other people, another guy who was in San Diego. So they kind of, we help each other apply. And, you know, I applied to 7 programs. By that time, you know, I had a good beta just coming from Spain, because nobody had good betas. You know, like I knew English, I spoke English, and you know, they kind of collectively decided that, you know, the best program for me was Harvard, you know, and for Emilio, we decided that he needed to go to Stanford, even though he got into Harvard, because, you know, I was already, I applied for a PhD in sociology, because up to that point, for 5 years, I had basically been doing math. I have been doing very, very equilibrium economics, very modeling, very math. This is what my colleague now Rich does. So I had been doing 5 years of that, and a very, you know, very strong very intense econometrics as well. So I wanted to, you know, I wanted to do things with empirics. I wanted to like do things with data. I had, you know, when I was at Berkeley, I wrote this paper in the summer course on inter-ethnic marriages with the Spanish census. So basically, they were Moroccans and Algerians, and I was looking at, you know, the woman had higher status than the male, and, you know, what happened to these people when I follow them. So I was like, I was really fascinated by the data, and I was fascinated by the data working with this professor in his social observatory lab. So I decided that I would do economics, and that I would do sociology. And that's like really how I landed into sociology, even though my interest was really more in historical economics or business history. But I really didn't know. And so that's how, this is kind of how I, you know, at Harvard in sociology, but a big field of sociology, many parts of it that I was really not interested at all. And I was more interested in economic sociology, historical sociology, political sociology, and, you know, economic history and all that. So this is, so the interesting thing is that, you know, like another anecdote is that before I got to Harvard, I thought I had terrible statistical skills. So I decided, you know, well, they kind of collectively decided, because they decided, you know, we decided that I would go to Michigan and suck up the, you know, 8 courses the entire summer, 3 months in the institute. It's called ICPSR, and I did this course that it's called the Summer Program in Quantitative Methods. So then, you know, the first day that I got to Harvard, I took this econometrics test, and basically I didn't have to take any more, which was kind of, it was kind of a mistake, but you know, like I kind of overdid it because I was so insecure. Like I thought, you know, like I'm gonna totally flunk. And, you know, the other part of the information is that when I left to go to do my PhD, I thought, okay, I have a grant, I have this money, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna party, I'm gonna have a great time. And then in 1 year, I'm coming back. There's no way I'm staying there. There's no way on earth. Like, you know, so that was like my, yeah, so yeah, that's how I arrived there, you know, kind of. It was like a little bit like that I had met, you know, that I had, you know, I was working for this professor, and that's kind of like what we were doing. I didn't want to disappoint him. And other people is like, okay, let's apply, you know, and then all of a sudden I found myself there. And
that's a great story, and a great, you know, collection of people you just mentioned. So you arrived at Harvard, and was the doctoral program, you already prepared, and you've taken courses and you've been to the US institutions before. So is there anything that surprised you about that process? And how did you, and the topics you mentioned in terms of race, in terms of marriage, those are classic sociological topics. Then how did you arrive at your dissertation topics, which is about business and interlocks?
Yeah, so I was not prepared at all, like zero prepared. I only had very good econometrics skills, and I definitely had like the imposter syndrome. And I thought, like when I first got there, I mean, I wasn't, I thought it was very competitive in a nasty way. Like this was my first impression, in the classes, because I was not used to this. I was not used to, like the typical comment, like in a seminar, I could barely finish the book and people were commenting on the footnotes, but then, I quickly, not quickly, but then I realized that, they had actually not read the book. They were like kind of, some of them, not all of them, so I quickly realized that they were probably as insecure as I was, and they were trying to impress, and then, like you become friends over time. But at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, I can barely like finish chapter 1. And these people are talking about the footnotes or the wrong T-score in like chapter 6 because they have, like, oh, so I was, so it was really, really, really a big shock. But I didn't worry too much because I was thinking about, I'm just going to have a great time here. I had money. I didn't have to work because I had worked 5 years of my entire life, 2 jobs. And, and also, my parents would leave me alone. So I also had, good grades, but I had to work very hard. So I thought, well, I don't have to work. I can just take classes. And so basically the reason, the number one reason why I decided to go to Harvard, even though was because I wanted to work with Theda Skocpol. And Theda Skocpol I had read her book, States and Revolutions, which is a book that compares, Russia. It's a very historical sociology book.
Yeah.
And then I had read her book, Soldiers and Mothers. And I wanted to do a dissertation comparing the welfare states. And that was my initial, idea, like when I applied and when I got there. Then when I got there, after I took some courses, I got more interested in economic sociology. I guess I took some courses in political science. I took, so like just the courses I took, and also at that time, and this is like, this exactly, I'll date myself, but this is exactly 1992, because that's the Spanish Olympics, which I completely missed because I had to be in Michigan taking statistics and survey methods and all sorts of things. At that time is when network analysis was becoming very, very big. And I took a course with Peter Marsden, which was, a big networks person at the time. So I got along very well with him. He was very warm. And at that time, then I decided that I would switch from Theda Skocpol. I would keep Theda Skocpol in my committee, but I would switch to somebody that was more matching my personality. Because, one of the big eye openings is that, some of these advisors, and this was a completely different situation at Illinois. Some of these advisors, and, I think everybody knows Theda Skocpol, she was very, very cold. She was, I remember meeting her the day after Christmas, and she didn't even ask me, like, how was your Christmas? Even though, like, I'm a Jewish person. No, she didn't even ask me, how was your holiday? Are you with somebody? And I just thought, this is insane. This is huge. I don't want to work with a person like this. She would not do any, so I just thought, I cannot work with her. So I switched to Peter Marsden, he's a very generous man and very warm. And even though, I could still continue to learn with Theda, I didn't want her as my main person. And then as a third person, I put Mauro Guillen, who I already knew. Mm-hmm. And he was at the time at Sloan. So, with Mauro also, like he was very focused at the organization, at the film level. So then I decided that I would do something, once I decided that I would stay, I decided that I would do something that I knew, that I had a little bit of competitive advantage, and it's something that I also care a lot about. So my dissertation at the end was comparing, 100 years of the directorship interlocks and cross-shareholdings of Spain and Italy, and trying to understand why these two economies had such different, corporate governance. I mean, that's like, it wasn't called corporate governance at the time. So this was, so I guess, like, if you were, so like, I guess, one of the things, so I have to make friends in the PhD, in the sense that, I think, I see here, I only see 9 people, and I see young. I see Samina, I see young, I see Asim, I see Razvan, I see, so I think, I see Rich. I think, the PhDs that, the relationships that I had with my PhDs at Illinois, I felt like they were a lot more warmer, and I'm sure it's the ones that Samina had at BU and, at Minneapolis, and that Craig has at Notre Dame. I mean, it's like, and I don't see anybody else to reach, probably at Purdue. So it was more distant. It was almost a self-made PhD. You had to ask for an audience, not so much with Peter Marsden or Mauro, but it was not as accessible. So, I guess, one of the takeaways, because that's one of the things that I think it's important, is that one of the takeaways is, choose wisely your PhD, because this is a lifetime decision. Like, you are going to be in touch with your PhD advisor and with your committee for the rest of your life. And so I think it's very important to have a good personality match, because, it's a very, later on at Illinois, when I became a lot more involved with the PhDs, it's a very stressful time. People, it's a time when people are young and they go through life changes. Some people get married, some people. So I think it's very important to have somebody that can support you, not only in your academics, but also in your personal life, or at least that they're there if something happens. I think that would be,
I love that. I think that's a great message in terms of finding a personality match between the PhD student and the advisor or team of supporters. The other thing you mentioned about the dissertation process, which I'm curious about, is you mentioned competitive advantage, right? The idea that, well, so my advisors, they have, various different interests and expertise, and, I'm gonna think about what I'm good at. So could you say a little bit more about that? I thought that was a really, really good point as well.
Yeah. So, I was interested in the welfare, I was interested in the welfare state and comparing welfare state systems, but I was also very interested in economic history, and at the time, Harvard had a very good, within the economics department, they had a very strong economic history department. And actually in Spain, I had also, done a lot of economic history and business history. So, I mean, I think that's also what, because I was in this environment, I was going to seminars, and so I think that was also that I thought, if I'm not going to start something new, I'm already interested in this, so why don't I continue this? And then with Peter Marsden, I became very interested in networks. I had, so I had read the paper, Granovetter's paper. Granovetter was out, the paper of Granovetter, but there were also, I was kind of a Marxist, so I was very influenced by Mike Useem, which now has moved completely out, but he's, Mike Useem, and then at Michigan, Miss Rookie, all these were like my big heroes, and Ron Barth, they were like kind of a generation, they were like the cutting edge people at the time, but they were a generation ahead of me. And, they were right, Jerry Davis, of course, Jerry Davis, my hero. And, so all these, so, I wanted to do this kind of work. I thought it was very, very interesting. And of course, the work of Mauro as well. And I was writing a book. I was not writing a dissertation because, that's like what people wrote. So,
the sociology
so
style,
that's why
right?
I ended up there.
Yeah. And I read the dissertation before this session, and what impressed me is it's a massive undertaking in terms of both the theory part as well as the very ambitious dissertation. You collected broad interlocks data from scratch for not only one setting, one country, but also two different countries. So Is that something you'd advise PhD students to do, thinking back?
Definitely not. I thought, I thought it was a great exercise, but there were so many mistakes. There were so many mistakes that actually, I don't think it was publishable. I wrote one paper out of my dissertation, which is really, when I finished my PhD, there was 8 of us in the job market, and I was the only one to get a job. And this was sociology, so it was hard to get a job in sociology. But the only reason why I got a job is because I had this one paper, which is, it was my first paper, which is the European Sociological Review, which, it was a decent journal in sociology. And this paper is a typical paper that, I had no clue, but, Peter Marsden should have been the co-author, but I had no clue. Like, I didn't even have the decency to invite him to be my co-author because he worked so much with me on this paper, so that's really what gave me, an advantage. And that was the only exercise, but my dissertation was simply an exercise. It was like an exercise that to publish it, and this is why, I didn't publish it, but it was written like an Oxford University Press manuscript. And like it was like I collected, I remember I went to Bocconi, I learned Italian, I took Italian classes at Harvard. It was easy, like from a Spanish person that already spoke 5 Latin languages, it was easy to learn another language. So I learned Italian, I read a lot of Italian books. I went to Bocconi with Anna Grandori, and, who was a great theorist, and, other people who are there, Giuseppe Soda. It's not today, Alfonso Gambardella and, Charlie Williams. It was back in the day, but I spent, 6 months in Bocconi collecting, because in Bocconi, they had incredible economic history department, with Amatori and a lot of very, very good people. So I collected the data from scratch, literally collecting from scratch. My mother helped me a little bit with the data, like, and inputting data. And then in Spain, I did the same. And then, because I had good math and good computational, because I had to work for IBM for 5 years, like basically translating all these manuals. I knew how to transpose matrix. I knew how to code. So I had these huge data sets that I could do, it was slow. But I could, manage all that data, the networks. I could do like, at the time it was UCINet. So, it was fun.
It's a beautiful piece. Thank you. So, from there, right, after you graduated at Harvard, you joined UIUC, and so why strategy, right? Why not sociology? What drive your decision there?
Yeah. So as I told you, they were very, I guess coming from sociology, there were few jobs. And, the other thing is, like, I also learned that if you get a PhD from an elite university, there are some places, let's say, there are some places, maybe, I don't know what places, but, not good enough, like the best thing that happened at Harvard for me was I learned a lot and I met my husband. So this is like absolutely the best thing that happened to me.
Absolutely.
So I had a boyfriend, and I came from a very liberal background. People in Europe at that time didn't marry. So, he was also a sociologist. He was Herminia Ibarra's RA. He had a PhD in sociology. And he was working with Owe Sorensen and Herminia Ibarra, and so he was a sociologist as well. And so we were both looking for jobs as a dual career. And, so I got an offer from Stanford, and I say, I have a boyfriend, and they said, I have a dog, next. So he would go to NYU, it's like, you say, I have a boyfriend, it's like, did you meet him yesterday at McDonald's, or what? Next. So I went to Illinois, and I said, I have a boyfriend, and they said, oh, we have a dual career because it's the middle of nowhere. Like we have this dual career. The only thing is, like, you have to marry him. And it's like, okay, where's the, fine. That's no big deal. It's like, where do I go?
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up at Illinois, because they hire both of us, like they hire both of us. But I tell you that it was, and that's, when I went to the job market, I went to both. But, it was also a time where business schools, you know, and I don't think this is no longer the time, but it was a time where business schools were, you know, were hiring people who were purists. They were hiring economists, they were hiring psychologists, and they were hiring sociologists. They wanted people with pure PhDs in the business school. So I was kind of hotter in the business school than in the sociology department. But you know, when I was in the job market, I was completely unprepared. And I'll tell you two anecdotes very quickly that can give you. I'll be fast, but that can give you an idea of this.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Anecdote number one. I go to Ohio State Fisher School, and of course, I print all the papers that everybody has published at that time. You know, still, you know, kind of like internet era. I publish I print everything, I read everything, everybody I'm going to meet, I'm, you know, extremely prepared, desperate for a job. And I'm giving the job talk, and I think it was Odette Shankar asked something about RBB, okay?
Right.
And Jay Barney is in the audience. I had no clue what RBB was. And I knew that something, I didn't say, of course, I didn't know, but I just, you know, I kind of like tried to get myself out of it, but I could see in the faces of the audience that it's like, oh my God, I just did something incredibly wrong. Of course, I didn't get the job. And only like 5 years later, I am a pretty good skier. I am in the lift in the OS winter conference in Utah.
Right.
And as you know,
Right.
Jay Barney is a very good skier as well.
Right.
I have my helmet. He's next to me. And I'm just like, he just sat next to me. And I had not talked to him, nothing. And I'm just like with my helmet, it's like, okay, I hope he doesn't remember who I am. You know, and he turns to me and says, so did you brush up on your RBB?
Oh my gosh.
So, okay, so I never use RBB, you know, like I'm still intimidated. And then my other one about Illinois is my other anecdote that it wasn't as bad, you know, but the other anecdote is that when I went there to give the job talk, Greg Northcroft was the chief editor of AMJ, okay? And he was impressed upon me that if I went there, I had to publish in AMJ. I had to publish in AMJ. He's the, you know, we have the editor of, you know, at Illinois, we have the editor of AMJ, the chief editor, you know, very clear. I had never read AMJ. I had read ASQ and SMJ. I had never, it was not in the William James Library at, you know, in the Department of Sociology. It was not in that library. I had never read. So I went back, you know, like, I didn't think, you know, there was no Google, there was no, so I went back to the library and I looked like desperate for for American Management Journal, because, you know, I knew about American Economic Review, American Sociological Review, American Journal of Sociology, and I couldn't find it. It's like, oh my God, like these people. Then I crossed the river, I went over to HBR, and, you know, I kind of like realized that I was looking at the wrong journal. And yeah, so anyway, so that was my other, you know, like that tells you how unprepared I was, you know, how unprepared I was. No job talk, nothing, you know, like, but, you know, that's how, you know, basically when I got there, I got a joint appointment at the institute because, you know, my dissertation had a lot of labor issues already. So I got to the Institute of Labor and Employment Relations. I had a 25% appointment there, and I was the only female in the faculty, and the students were 75% female. So I think they wanted to hire me because they needed a female teaching comparative employment systems. And then my other 75% appointment was at the College of Business. So, you know, so I just want to say this for the record, but, you know, going to Illinois was the best decision of my life. You know, I had a great time. I did my second PhD there. You know, like I learned so much from everybody. You know, like it's like an incredibly stimulating, you know, academically, intellectually stimulating place. You know, it's like, it's a very collegial place. It was like doing a second PhD. So it was, you know, it was wonderful, wonderful.
That is fantastic. Lovely story. So, so you not only, you know, brushed up on your knowledge of RBB and AMJ, you also published a seminal piece in 2003, right? So you published your the piece from dissertation, as well as, you know, a major piece came out at AMJ on cross-national diversity of corporate governance with Gregory Gregory Jackson. So could you tell us a little bit about the backstory about that piece?
Yeah. So, you know, it was in AMR. Yeah.
Yes,
so that's,
AMR.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you know, like the good thing about Illinois is that they were very open-minded. You know, they were very open-minded, you know, starting with Hussein Levlevici. He was, you know, write what you like, you know, like they're really not as concerned with A's and B's and, you know, and actually my very first publication was in org studies because Hussein encouraged me to send it there. And, you know, they were very much about the papers and very collegial. And so, you know, I had this, I was still very intimidated by AMJ. So I wouldn't even dare to send anything there because then Greg Northcroft would read it and I would embarrass him because my work, you know, like I just, you know, I had this, I mean, I didn't feel I was prepared. So what happened is that I was at ASA, so I had never met Greg Jackson, my co-author. And I was at ASA and I was in this poster session at ASA. And in this poster session, there was myself, Greg Jackson, who at the time had just gotten a PhD in sociology from Columbia University. And he had gone over to work with I'm blanking the name, Massimo Ayoko in Japan, okay? He had gone to Japan to work there. Mm-hmm. And then there were 3 other people, which I remember the names perfectly, who were very high profile people, okay? One of them came just to say hello, but the other 2, I think they were too embarrassed because it was a poster session. It was really beyond, you know, below them. So they didn't show up. So it was ASA, you know, like I was a first year PhD, and Gregory and I is like, okay, clearly it's just you and I. Any audience that we had disappeared by that point because, you know, the big shots were not there. And so Gregory and I started talking, and he had written basically the same dissertation that I had written, but comparing, you know, and the framework was more similar countries. We were looking for more similar countries. And Gregory had written exactly the same dissertation, very similar for Japan and Germany. So we decided to you know, put together our work and write this piece for this special issue. For, you know, no, it was not I don't remember if it was a special issue, but for AMR. And we sent it to AMR, and I have to say, you know, I mean, I did something which, you know, I would recommend nobody to do it, which is probably I had read very few AMRs. And when we sent it to AMR, I'm sure it was a big, big disaster. But 2 things happened that I think made the paper publish and better. The first one is that we had the best editor ever, which was, you know, it was, you know, my second editor, and the first one was not very involved, but the second one, so the editor was Bert Canella. Of course, I'll never forget. So he just gave us so much feedback. I was like, okay, let's do this. It's very, you know, we sent really, it was something horrible. I'm sure it was like 60 pages because we didn't read the thing. I mean, because I had no clue, right? So this editor and the reviewers were amazing. And so the editor was great. And then at Illinois, I had amazing people that helped me. Like, you know, I remember I wanted to put something about property rights. So I went to Joe Mahoney and I said, okay, and then he refreshed my memory. He's like, okay, yeah, I did all that in economics, you know, all these I already knew. Like, so then I went to Matt Kratz. He read my first 5 pages and he wrote, I think, 15 pages of comments, you know. So she's like, he could only go the first 5 pages. He had so many comments. He's like, okay, let's stop here because I cannot take it anymore. Right. So as I said, that was really, you know, and then I went to Andrew Seth and it's like, you know, gave me comments and, you know, and to, you know, Mike Pratt, you know, and, you know, they were great people and they just helped me, you know. I just decided at that point, and, you know, and this is another piece of advice for the PhDs and for the assistant professors. Right. You know, up to that point, and I think because, you know, Harvard was a great place to learn, but it was very entrepreneurial. You had to be very self-disciplined. It was not very collegial. I mean, it was sincerely not very collegial. Mm-hmm. It was not, you know, it was very aggressive, very competitive, mm-hmm. But I realized that people were helping each other and that asking for help. So my advice, you know, to young people mm-hmm. would be ask for help, you know, like, if you get stuck, ask for help. And at that point is when I came out. It's like, well, swim or swim. Like, if I don't ask for help, this is not going to get published, because they're asking me all these things. You know, Berkanella was giving me, and some of the things I didn't even understand what he was asking me. So they were, you know, helping me. So I think that, you know, I mean, the fact that we brought from sociology some ideas, but that was not enough. You know, having a great editor, great reviewers, which I have no clue who the reviewers were. And then, you know, being able to have these amazing colleagues that allow me to have the time to work on it. And, you know, because they also gave me great teaching load, and they treated me very well. So I think that was,
Well, which also, you know, it's also a major piece, right? A major hit, which now have over 2,000 citations. So did you expect that at the time when writing this?
No, no. I mean, I didn't even know what the citation was.
Why do you think it had, the piece itself had, you know, had the success it had in retrospectively?
Why do I think it had a success? Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like my other piece, like my other AMR, you know, maybe now I have 4 AMRs, but, you know, my other one, like the CSR one that we can talk about it later if you like. Yeah. I think you know, one of the things that possibly is well done is that it's easy to understand. It's not very complicated. It's like, I think any of you could have thought about it, but it's just like I brought something to, you know, I was very concerned. And at the time I was also teaching comparative employment systems. So I brought labor, and, you know, at the time I was still a Marxist from the Department of Sociology. So I didn't call, you know, I don't know what the box is now, but I didn't call owners. I mean, I think I called them capital, you know, like from Marxism. And I think, you know, Bert made me change it to owners because, you know, we were talking about, but I think the reason why it was successful, you know, or why, you know, it got some attention is because it was very written in a very plain English, not a lot of big words. And we were, you know, introducing is like, okay, if you look outside of the US, you know, this was my passion. And even today, you know, and I have here Chris Crosland, who has been also an editor of mine, and he's been very encouraging because, you know, like when you get out of the US and the work like that he has done on managerial discretion as well, when you get out of the US and when you do comparative work, it really forces you to be a lot more analytical, you know, because you can really compare how things are different. So this has been, you know, my passion and my competitive advantage, that if you do comparative work, it forces you to be, you know, more analytical, I think, you know, like, so, you know, I think that's the, That's great. That's great. Well, so you mentioned the CSR piece, so let's talk about that. This is a piece. Okay, so the CSR piece, it's, So it came out in 2007, which is a year after you got tenure, right? So it is related to corporate governance, but a little bit, you know, still a different topic. So how did that come about? Okay, so, you know, this was completely different, you know, so it took a long time because I think it was actually accepted much earlier, but I think it took 1.5 years, if not 2 years, to get on print. But basically, this was very simple. So, you know, those of you who are at Illinois, Urbana-Champaign is a small community, and I lived in the faculty ghetto, and the faculty ghetto is a place near the university where you can walk. And so the houses were houses that were owned by people who had the house, because, you know, not many people move out of Illinois or Champaign-Urbana at the time. So all the houses, which, you know, obviously compared to Boston, they were very affordable houses. Most of the houses had master gardens. So they had beautiful, beautiful gardens. And these people were moving out of these houses, selling it to new professors. And they were very concerned that people like me, who had grown in Barcelona, you know, I actually grown, you know, in the countryside as well, but they couldn't tell the difference between a weed and a prairie flower. So we all had mentors. So, you know, we had mentors in this garden, you know, so I lived in a street that was called Vermont Avenue. And there was a Vermont Avenue Garden Club. And the only goal of that club is that we wouldn't destroy the gardens that they had curated for so many years. And, you know, they were very like, you know, so we would, you know, I had 2 children by that time, and I had a little trolley, a red trolley, and we would go from garden to garden with a red trolley, and I would just put drinks in there, like vodka, and I would mix cocktails for the ladies. The ladies were 70s and 80s. you know, like we would go around. It's like, oh, this is this is that, and you know, like there would be, each of us had a mentor. You know, we would go with my red trolley, all the houses, and they would educate us. So I met some other professors, and two of the people that I met were Cindy Williams, who was a corporate law professor, and she had published a very, very influential article in the Harvard Law Review on disclosure in the SEC. So like this is a very, very influential article in CSR disclosure, you know, for corporate law. And then the other person that I met in these, you know, tours that started like at 4 p.m. and then, you know, like basically the old ladies, because they didn't realize what was in the dream, maybe sometimes, you know, like sometimes they cried about the disasters that we made. The other person that I met there was Deborah Rapp. And Deborah Rapp was a very micro IO psychologist who had been trained as a justice ethics. And we became good friends, you know, together with other people. But at some point, you know, I told them, and she was interested in justice and a little bit on sustainability. But at some point I told them, okay, you know, I really don't have the time to hang out with you. If we're going to hang out together, let's do something productive. So let's do something productive. And so I saw this call. This was a special issue. Right. And I said, let's get together. When I put, you know, it was at the time, you know, some of my children to bed, even though I'm typically a, you know, 5 a.m., 4 a.m. person in the morning, but at that time, so let's get together at 8 p.m. Let's open a bottle of wine and let's start discussing what's wrong with sustainability, with CSR, and etc. So, you know, so we, you know, like every week we would meet at 8 o'clock, you know, I don't know, one day a week at 8 o'clock. And, you know, we would open 1 or 2 bottles of wine and we would draw and we would discuss. And then, you know, like Cindy, you know, I would say TMT and Cindy's like, TMT, what's that, TMT? And Deborah would say, the Deontic Justice, like, you know, like, time out, what is this? You know, like, and so we ended up writing a paper, you know, that at the end, because we had talked to each other so much, that I have to say that paper, when we sent it to AMR, was a conditional accept. Because we, you know, the paper, you know, has, you know, we had talked to each other. It was really, because, you know, they had never read an AMR. They had never, you know, they were in their field, but it was really interdisciplinary. And, you know, and it was really fun to work with them. We were really concerned about the issues. We were, you know, I was a corporate governance person, but I thought that it was very important, you know, the decisions were made within corporate governance. And so awesome. So that's how and then we wrote, I think we wrote, you know, maybe 6 more together. You know, we became very good friends. And so
gardening club gardening club and cocktail, that's how it all started. Fantastic. Let me move on to the, you know, to the service side. So you did amazing amount of editorial services, really a ton. So why, excuse me for asking, but why do you do it?
Okay, so, you know, I did it because, you know, people ask me, and at some point I realized I had to say yes, but I had to say yes for the right journal, right? I had to say, so, and I also felt that my career, I had great editors, and that it was my time to give back, you know, it was my time to do it, you know, like, so I just felt like I had, you know, great editors who had really educated me and helped me make my articles better. And I just thought it was time for me to do it. And so some journals asked me early on, and I just didn't feel it was the right journal for me. But then Org Science, I felt it was a really funky journal that you could publish about, you know, opera singers, or you could publish about, you know, anything, and that it was pretty decentralized, and that they were concerned about the story, like, so I just felt it was the right, you know, and I have to say, Zur Shapira completely like brainwashed me, and he was a great editor. We had a great relationship. And so I said yes to him. You know, before that, I had done Corporate Governance International Review, but that's like a happy journal, you know, in the sense that you don't reject papers, you are very up to date, with the corporate governance as a field, not so much as a, you know, like as a, you know, like as a niche journal. It was just a fun journal. but I learned a lot from work science, from reviewers like you, Joe, amazing reviewers, and from Razvan and Young and Weishi, all these people, all of you. I'm sure I'm forgetting all the names. Junho, I learned so much from my reviewers. I learned, and I also keep me on my toes with the literature. You have to be very up to date. So it's very hard work. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to get out of work science, and good luck, Samina. It's very hard. So yeah. when AMR asked, when Sherry Thatcher asked me to join AMR, and Rich here is also my associate editor, I just thought it would be great to work with her. And I just thought, AMR, even though I started, from economics and being like a hardcore econometrician, right. I'm very interested in theory. And I just thought, it would be a nice way to get out of work science, do 3 years. And I also miss the team. Like I also like the team. And I knew that Sherry would do like a lot of teamwork. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that, yeah,
really, so really happy.
This is why I do it, because I learn a lot from the reviewers. I mean, I know, I just think I believe on the reviewer system. I believe on good editors, mm-hmm. and some of you are editors at SMJ, at SEJ, at different, mm-hmm. So I just
So given that, given your ample experience in the editorial process, any advice you have for authors or even editors about that process, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, so so I definitely learn, and I definitely I definitely learn a lot, and we make mistakes because we're humans. So I am sure when I started, I rejected papers that maybe should have been accepted, and I am sure I might accept papers that should be rejected. We are humans, and there's always an error there, mm-hmm. And but the advice, I guess, so the advice I would give editors, and this is like how I'm going into AMR and how I evolve within org science, is that to be more open-minded, like if it's a good idea, but the data is not quite there, but the data is never going to be there. There's no perfect paper. So is there enough there that it's a compromise? So I have become more lenient, like looking like for a really good idea, for a really good story, like, something might not be right, but it is not like a flawed, like, so that this is why, like, I think AMR is going to be very liberating, because we don't have to worry about identification. We don't have to worry about some of the issues that they are more concerning, in empirical papers. So I would say to editors, and that's what I learned, is to be, and I've always tried, because I also felt very well treated by editors, to be the author's, ally. And I guess for authors, I would say that it is very important. I don't know if this is very basic, but I think it's very important. And these mistakes I made at the very beginning, but it's very important to be able to join a conversation in that journal and speak the language of that journal. So, try to figure out, like what is the debate that is going on in that journal? Like if there's a debate in ASQ, don't try to publish in SMJ or in org science on that debate. Like it's very, so kind of like see the debate that goes on and join that debate, number one. And second, and this is even more salient when you are like finance and, like bringing from finance or from psychology or from sociology, like, so this is what, and then the language of that journal, like be very aware of the language of that journal. I think that's very important. And, I guess in my AMR, like my first AMR, I made the mistake to send a paper that was not ready. It would get desk rejected today. So just, there are so many reasons that now papers get desk rejected. So try to get it as good as possible to get beyond the desk reject. And there are things that you can do. If they say 30 pages, don't get 35, get 30. If the tables are like that, if SMJ wants the tables in a certain way. Don't do it differently, you know.
Right.
So this is to begin with, and then, you know, have people to read it before you send it, have people to give you comments. So I guess these are, you know, the basic,
Right.
yeah, just kind of basic.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
So let me also move on to your, you know, other side of the service. You've been doing super active leadership in professional organizations. So thinking back to the test you take before, you are the boss, Ruth. So let me ask about your specific, zooming to your most recent initiative in SMS in the capacity of board members on gender issue in academia. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. No, so just as a footnote, I just, you know, these days I'm listening a lot to books, and I just listen to Super Bosses and by Sid Finkelstein, and it's really, really fun to listen, you know, like really interesting. So any of you teaching leadership, you know, a super boss is Don Hambrick, and some of you have him as your former colleague or advisor, and I agree. And Don Hambrick recommended to me to listen or read The Transaction Man, and that's another good book that I'm listening at the moment. But so, you know, the gender thing. So, you know, basically, so I guess another part of my advice in general is, and maybe this is because I moved to, you know, to management, being a complete orphan. Like, I didn't know anybody, you know, like I remember my colleagues at Illinois, you know, my great colleagues had come from Wharton or Michigan, and, you know, at Academy, they went to their parties. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any network. So I just think, you know, and I didn't do it strategically or deliberately, but I guess I was very thirsty to meet friends and to, you know, like meet people and be part of a community. So I think it's very important to have your community, and it could be two communities. Like, it doesn't have to be one, right? It could be your community of, you know, like, as you know, some of you know, like I have a reading group of people who do CSR at corporate governance. I had it at Illinois. I have this community of assistant professors. It was a reading group of that, a safe group. Now in Boston, I have a reading group of corporate governance and CSR, where we basically read rejections, and we, you know, we also drink Japanese whiskey, and but, you know, like, it's important to have communities. So, you know, so even a small communities, whether it's communities of working mothers or, you know, your own communities. And one thing that we learned, so, you know, like, so I've been, you know, I have different communities, but definitely SMJ, SMS and SMJ is a journal that I feel very, very close to, because I understand economics, but I understand empirics. I'm very interested in the phenomena driven, even though, you know, I'm a theorist as well. But, and so, you know, I felt, you know, AIB and SMS, you know, obviously STR, but STR is a bigger, you know, STR, you know, within strategy is definitely a community as well, you know, but AOM is way, you know, probably way too big. This is why it's great what you're doing now, Samina, especially, and all the team, that to have more of a community. But I think it's very important for junior people to have communities, and these communities might be changing. And at some point of your life, you might want a community that is like, okay, I'm gonna go in that community to convince them that they're doing great work in modeling, but they need to do great work in modeling and sustainability, and something else. Like, I'm just gonna go there with a mission. Or sometimes, like, I want a support group. Sometimes is, you know, as you change, as you evolve, you might, you know, join different communities. So, you know, so I got involved with SMS, I guess, first, you know, with the corporate governance, you know, leadership, interest group, and then global strategy. These were very small communities. Some people are here in this call, very, very active. John Bundy, Craig. So, you know, and then I, you know, I got elected to the board. Thank you, all of you, for, you know, and it's been very, very interesting because it gives you a completely different view. And I think I was part of this generation that had transitioned from the old guard to the new, you know, no longer now younger, but to the new generation. And there was a lot of work to do. And, you know, we did a survey. So now I'm getting to the gender. We did a survey, and this was the post-Berlin, you know, and post-Berlin fiasco with, I mean, I actually didn't see it. Famina saw it. the dance, the very controversial dance. And, you know, there was a survey about women in SMS. And one of the results of the survey, and this was, you know, we had a task force from the board, and one of the findings, it was that, you know, many people perceive SMS as an all-white male, you know, network, all-boy network society. And so that's how, you know, basically we started with membership to try to think about ways to give basically opportunities for women and men, both of them, you know, for men to be more educated about how they could include women, and for women to think about, you know, how they can be scholars, how can they be teachers, how can they be researchers, how can they, you know, administrators, you know, like in this profession, how they can be women. And, you know, there are many different views on this because, you know, even in these calls, or, you know, we had a networking breakfast at SMS in Minneapolis, and we invited men and female. Samina was in one of the tables, and they were like, you know, and everybody that came, you know, said in advance issues, and there are so many issues, so many things, and there are also different points of view on how to approach them. And, you know, obviously this is a very individual, you know, individual perspective, but I have to say that, you know, if I look back, when I first joined Illinois, I came from this, you know, elite institution, which is Harvard, which I had never, ever heard the word touchdown. What else? Field goal. I mean, I don't know what are the other words. Home run. Never, ever, ever. I had just married a person that I had no idea that he was interested in sports, that he was crazy about college basketball. Not only that, he was, as many of you know, my husband was, he played for Northeastern. You know, he was on the team for 4 years. But, you know, at Harvard, people didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about the sports. So he was in heaven. You know, and now my son wants to go to a college, you know, a college that has college sports. But, you know, at the time, I didn't realize that, and I was very mad at the beginning because, you know, we would go to a meeting and they would be like, oh, that was a home run. It's like, hey, time out. What is that? That was good or bad? So, you know, and I remember at the beginning, I was kind of mad, and then I kind of joined them because they taught me how to, you know, they taught me sports, and, you know, I love basketball at Illinois. They were really good at the time. But basically what I'm trying to say is that, you know, if we educate, if we give tools to women, you know, and you know, many of the questions here are from male who are head of the departments, who are colleagues, and that sometimes they're trying to help women and they're actually not helping them. So, you know, to feel less, so, you know, this was the goal, like, and this is the goal. Like, so things about, you know, sexual harassment, which is a hard one, but also negotiate. You know, how do you negotiate? Not only salary, but other things, time, schedule, and how you know, maternity leave, you know, like all sorts of, you know, work-life balance. How do you ask for help? And, you know, how do you say, you know, please, let's not have meetings after 5 because I have to go pick up my kids. You know, I mean, and not feel like when you're an assistant professor, it's like, oh, you know. And, you know, I guess at Illinois, this was a little bit more salient than in other places because, you know, one of the spouses didn't have to work, you know, didn't have to work because the life was not expensive. So many spouses were at home. But so I, you know, I just kind of like looking back, I just felt like, you know, like it would have been nice to have more tools. And then within SMS, I really feel that, you know, some women feel they're not part of the network. Yeah. And it's like, okay, how do you network as a woman? You know, you're not, you know, you might not need to golf. You can do other things, you know. Yeah. Very nice. So, yeah. So this is, so, you know, Becky, I have to, you know, put a plug for Becky Kohi. She's an HR person at Cornell. So she and I have been organizing webinars and, you know, trying to kind of like address these issues, you know, with also, you know, male and female, and just trying to be more blunt about it and, you know, educate ourselves, even our, you know, myself and everybody. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. So let me ask one more question before we move on to the audience Q&A. Let me also say, please put in your question on the chat, and we'll call, actually Pitosh will call on you when we're in that section. So Ruth, I wonder, given the discussion we've had, I wanted to get your thoughts on this question that I've been wondering as well. So is globalization under assault? and what are your thoughts and advices for international students and scholars?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like we're not in a really great place, I would say, in terms of, everything that's going on in the world, and some of it, like the COVID didn't help. I mean, we didn't ask for COVID, but the other, as we know, the COVID is affecting mostly to, people at the bottom of the pyramid. So there's populism, there's like, some other, so they're big. So I would say, like, while there is, and I wrote something about with Bit Henitz and Joan Oxley about this, while for the strategy organization, we had the special issue on this, while there is maybe plenty of trade, plenty of, financialization of the world, what happens is that people and access to resources, those are definitely not equally distributed around the world. And this is like, and the problem is much more, it's getting a lot more accentuated, right? So I think it's no longer even globalization. I mean, I think it's like, what it's called like the wicked problems, right? Like these huge problems, wicked problems that range from, climate change, social, inequality, the role of labor and the fragility of employment, particularly in the United States, but also in emerging markets. But I would say, I am in Spain now, and I have to say, in Spain, even though we're in Southern Europe, we have a safety net. Anybody who was, we have a much, much stronger safety net. There is free health for everybody. They take somebody in a helicopter and, it's not the Ministry of Spain. It's not like a very, they don't care who it is, so there's a lot more equality. There is not a huge difference in salaries. So, I mean, I guess, just, at a very broad level, there is a system, at the system level, the system is completely broken. The system, and we are in a crisis. We are in a world crisis. And I am, I actually have great, I'm up at night thinking about, how I can help this incredible social inequality that you see, we see it in Spain, because we have immigrants that come, and immigrants that come from Northern Africa, but, we also see it, in Beirut. I mean, extreme problems, which is systemic problems, triggered by corruption, triggered by poor government, triggered by irresponsible business, triggered by, immoral citizens. So, I mean, it's so big. And this is like, I guess, I don't know how much it has to do with globalization, but it is a global problem. It is a huge global problem. And I don't know, as I told you before this talk, I was listening to Paul Adler, and, I've also been reading his book, The 99% Economy, which is a book that suggests that, we need to basically move to socialism. It's a pretty radical book, but basically says, the way we have it, we cannot fix it. And because, the way the world was designed after neoliberalism, it was designed in a way that we were trying to control governments, but we have not controlled the corporation and the power of the corporation. So, some of the work that I do, like some of the work on owners is, in the United States and actually all over the world, there's a concentration of private assets so big in so few hands that is so dangerous. So, how comes that all over the world now we have people who are business people? How come that we have, as a former, the Exxon CEO, Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, this is huge problem. so because, you know, business has become so powerful, and, you know, kind of like the founders of the social democratic, they didn't plan for business to be so powerful. So I think, you know, it requires, I mean, this is kind of like the globalization, but it requires like a reset of the entire system. And, you know, it requires, you know, that we as, you know, we as researchers do work that is relevant. We as educators, you know, do, you know, kind of like implant that we join, you know, associations, and that we, so, you know, I'm trying to do a little bit more of that as well, to try to impact on how we can help, you know, how we can help, because I just think it's like such, the magnitude is so big, and the urgency, you know, climate change is like, you know, we saw COVID stop some of the missions, but it was nothing. I mean, it's way beyond. So this is, so now we have a problem, right? Like in Northeastern, we rely a lot on international students. I teach a lot of international students. They're not going to be able to come. So what do we say to the, you know, like I had a visitor scholar who was supposed to come. So what do we, you know, like, I guess to be in a more positive note, what do we do? What do we do that now we're in this polarized world? And I think what we do is exactly what we're doing now here, which is let's build communities, even if they are virtual communities. Let's build these communities that people can brainstorm, that they can think, that they can, you know, I think that's like, you know, because every one of us has actually a lot of agency.
Right.
You know, so other than the government and the corporations, we also need to think about the individual agents. So this is kind of, I mean, I don't know, like, sorry about the detour, but it's a, you know, global, you know, I think it's beyond globalization now. It's like, you know, it's like, it's beyond kind of,
yeah. Excellent. So with that, we're gonna, you know, close off this part of the interview. Thank you so much, Ruth. And we're gonna go into the Q&A, but before that, let me invite all of you to, if you can, show your video, and we'll take a good photo on Zoom, and it'll be a memory for all of us. Okay, so Pitosh, will you be taking the photo?
Are you awake?
Yes, I'm on.
All right, so let me count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Do we get it? We good?
He's muted, so I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So
Perfect. Thank you.
So with that, we're gonna move to the second part of the Q&A. I already saw questions piling up, and let me pass it over to my colleague Pitosh Hayden, and who's gonna, you know, call out on you folks. Pitosh, you're muted.
No longer. I don't think so. I think he's frozen.
I think he's frozen. Yeah.
He's frozen.
I want to give. Meanwhile, I want to give to I don't know how you say, a cheer to my co-authors here. From my very first co-author, Young Lee. Yeah, he just published, I think, his first, or is in the process of publishing his first theory paper.
Yeah.
To all my co-authors and my super co-authors, you know, Wei Shi, who's also here. I don't know if he's still here, but who keep me embarrassed by not my lack of productivity, keep me on my toes. So having good and fun co-authors is very, very important to have a happy life.
Okay, I think we lost Pitosh. So let me start by, and we'll see. You know, I'm sure he will come back. So let me start by calling on Rich.
Yunko is also here.
Rich, you had a question about unanswered questioning strategy.
Yeah. So my question is, what are the most important unanswered questions in strategy at this point? What do we not know at this point that we really should?
Okay, so I think, you know, I don't, you know, I'm really not trained as a strategy person at all. I actually never taken I've never taken a strategy class, I teach global strategy.
Well, then,
So
sorry, then let me change the question a little bit. So what then would you say are the most important unanswered questions about corporate governance?
Okay.
Or about global business?
Yeah. So
pick one of those.
Yeah.
What do we not know about those that we should?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I think in corporate governance, so there are two, one is like at the like micro level. I am very interested in understanding the owner, like at the micro, and I don't have the skills to do that, but more at the micro kind of cognitive behavioral level, like, this work that, Razvan is doing a little bit more like at the cognitive level. I think, looking at the agency, and that all the actors have an agency. And I think within a strategy, we could learn a lot from psychology and just kind of like starting to, unpack that box at the individual level. What are the constraints? What are the enablers? What are the incentives? Like at that level, I think, within corporate governance, I think there could be some work done on that, some more work. Then I'm still very interested in owners, very, very interested in owners, like foreign owners, sovereign wealth funds, family owners, like how the owners have different incentives towards different firm outcomes, such as, investing in R&D, investing in sustainability, the mission of the firm, how they treat the employees. I think the backbone of a corporation is the owners. So to understand what drives these owners, and it's not only money, and how we can design a system that this corporation can be better corporate citizens. So I think that, like kind of get more into the business and society part. And, corporate governance is important because corporate governance is where the decisions are structured and where you empower one actor and not the other. So this is, but, I really would like to tie it to questions that are important for society, like to stay competitive, but not only, financially competitive, but also in terms of innovation that I don't know so much about, but social innovation in terms of, benefit society, empower labor. So, I think this is kind of like this kind of at that level, and, this changes a lot by country, like by, which kind of country you are, which kind of setting. So this is, thank you for the question.
Great. Let me ask.
I think Ming Jer has a question. Sorry, I'm like taking over, but I shouldn't.
That's good.
I only see 9 people because my thing is kind of.
So Minjer, please go ahead.
Yeah. First, Joe, thank you for the wonderful interview. And also, Ruth, I'm not sure whether we have met, but I always enjoy your work and so on. And let me, given is, I want to turn this Q&A into more like interactive discussion. I think Rich raised a great question, and perhaps I can help to simplify, his question from my viewpoint, and then I can pose you the question I'm interested in. I think Rich's question to me is a very simple question. I think the first part would be, what is the role of business strategy as an academic field today? And then we can expand into the second half of the sentence. In today's divided and polarized, or even whatever kind of adjective you want to use, like, post-globalization world and so on. So I think that's really the big question of our time. And then given that, Asim is here, and given his interest in both political strategy and tech and so on, and Ruth, I think your specialty in global strategy and among many others. I think my question would be, this is also one of the primary event of our time, and which is likely to last for the next 3 or 4 decades, even beyond the November election. How can we approach or even study the tensions between US and China. And certainly, you know, taking the competitive dynamics perspective, I have my own thoughts, but people like Asim, given your interest in non-market strategy and technology and so on, and Ruth, and among many others. So I'm just wondering, or Rich may say to us, now this is not a part of the things that we should study and we should even care as a strategy scholar. So I think those kind of things, I think, is very relevant and very generic and also very meaningful. And many of us, and even in this audience, I myself came from Taiwan, and I can add the complexity to the whole phenomenon just from the Taiwanese viewpoint. And then we have, you know, now India, and certainly I think, Samina, you're aware of the things going on across the border, you know, over the last 3 months, and of this whole pandemic happened. So I think that perhaps is what, I don't know, Rich, maybe I can, you know, overstretch what you intend to ask, but I personally feel that it is very much the kind of question as an academic, I would like to have some clarity even for myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, you asked, there's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things,
Yeah,
a lot of very interesting things.
I know.
So I'll just kind of briefly, you know, touch on some of them. But, you know, so, you know, the first one is the role of business strategy. And, you know, I think I'm here being a little bit inspired by Jim Walsh on the role of business strategy. And I think the role of business strategy is probably like, you know, one way to answer it would be the article that they wrote with Tom Donaldson on shareholder versus stakeholder. Yeah. And these debates that we get hung up on, you know, like we get hung up on these debates, it's like, well, this is not the important debate. So the role of business strategy is not to get hung up on, you know, these kind of dichotomous debates, but kind of like to work on something, use business strategy to solve problems and not get hung up on these kind of ideological, you know, like the agency theories versus the, so I think the role of business strategy is to, you know, use the tools in business strategy to solve and to at least tackle, approach, have debates about, you know, real life problems. And one problem could be, you know, one problem, which is a real problem, is this tension, the US-China tension. That's like a real problem because, you know, because of the global value chain and how it affects so many things in how the world works, how the economic world, how the social world works. You know, in terms of, you know, like in terms of this divided and polarized world, I think we as academics, we need to do, you know, there are two things that I believe we can do. One is listen, like, you know, and this, you know, this is something that maybe, you know, this is something that actually Anita McGann said in the presidential address of AOM. They said, meet your opponent in the middle of the road. Listen to the, what is the argument of the people who are against climate change? What are their arguments? Listen to other people and try to understand where are they coming from? Where are they coming? Why, you know, the people who vote for Trump, where are they coming from? What are their arguments? I mean, you know, and try to engage on a dialogue with people who have very different views from you and try to, because in that way we can advance, you know, like if we are in this polarized world, I mean, you know, the world, like even, you know, I'm in Catalonia, there are people who want to be independent, there are people who do not, you know, they are not talking to each other. We're not going to make progress. We cannot, you know, make progress. In the US, the same. It's so polarized. You know, the COVID has turned, as you know, into a political thing. So I think, you know, meeting people in the road, and we as academics are trained to listen to different debates. So I think this is important. And translating, you know, being able to be a facilitator, to translate. And then, you know, the other thing that I have been, you know, I have done in a very, very minuscule, but that has been kind of one of my, you know, fun things to do is to try to find find different audiences for the same message. So, you know, like I have published in law reviews, I have published in ethics journals, I have published in international journals, strategy journals, OB journals. So, you know, and I really would like to, you know, like move into more practitioner journals, like that actually the people making decisions read, you know, like some of you have published in the HBR Online. So I think those have impact. So if we could, you know, we have no impact, zero impact in the real world. So if we could start getting out of our bubble and trying to, you know, translate our work. And I think now, actually, now that social media and that, you know, we're all a lot more virtual, you know, I guess like the blog of you know, the blog of Sid Finkelstein, you know, many, you know, CEOs follow it. So if we could start having some of this influence, I think, you know, like using business, you know, going back to the business strategy, using the tools that we know, you know, what is competition versus cooperation? Why business should be doing both at the same time? Why seeking only profits might not be sustainable long-term, you know, and educating, you know, because we are educators, you know, this is what we are. Educating communities, educating decision makers, educating our students, educating each other, you know, and, you know, even as editors, as reviewers, thinking about, you know, at SMJ, actually, they try to do that a lot. They're very worried at SMJ, you know, how does this have an impact? You know, why is it relevant? How is it relevant?
Right.
So I think this is, you know, and I think that all the political problems are actually business problems, you know, because it's so intertwined. So, you know, the tension US-China is a huge problem for, you know, global strategy, huge problem. And, you know, Wei Shi and I, who is in this call, we have looked at this, you know, like how, foreign investors, when you have foreign investors in the US, how they lobby, what do they do? How do they try to influence government? And so, you know, so it is so intertwined that I honestly don't think you can, and, you know, this is probably going back to, you know, all the sociology and political sociology. You cannot study business forgetting, you know, the environment, forgetting the politics in business, because business decisions are about power, are about authority, you know, and this is business strategy. Who has the power to make decisions? Who has the resources to make decisions? So whether you model it like Rich does, model it, or whether you study it as a Sim and Zhao, you know, they are there. It's like, it's all about power, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think this should be very much at our, and this is why when I answer my question, I think we need to go back at the agent, at the people or teams of people making decisions and say, okay, what does motivate you? What are your constraints? You know, and the recent paper that I published at SMJ, thanks to Craig Crosland, is like, it looks at that. If you're not entrenched and you can make more long-term decisions, which decisions are you going to make and who are they going to be good for? So just kind of, you know, like how is, you know, looking more at the agent, looking more at the constraints, and these are political constraints. These are, yeah.
Yeah, great.
So this is a long way to answer, but I think you ask very, very, very good questions that they're very hard to answer, but they are very, very important.
This is fantastic.
Actually, Zhao,
and,
I think, Zhao, you can try to answer this same question, given your quote, Chinese and Tsinghua background.
I'm not gonna try, but I'm looking forward to hear how you think about it tomorrow. So audience, come back tomorrow. So I see that Pitosh is back. Hey.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
Hey,
would you like to continue moderating?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Yao. I'm back. Apologies for the technology difficulties. Let's I was thinking some questions have been raised even before the session that were passed on to Ruth. I think one that was echoed now by Craig was raised by some participants beforehand, and this particularly relates to, you know, we're hearing about Ruth now, and this is effectively a superhuman achievement. You know, everything she does. So, you know, a lot of us are wondering, how do you manage this balance, or how do we get some sense of something that resembles work-life balance, or, you know, as Craig raises this, do you sleep? Maybe Craig, do you want to elaborate on this perhaps?
Very quickly, thanks, Pratosh. And Ruth, thanks so much for doing this session. I know I speak for everyone when I say that you're an inspiration and a role model to all of us. So thanks for taking the time and for giving us a bit more of a window. I've always been astonished at how much you get done. It terrifies me, actually. And I figure you either just don't sleep or you're much smarter than most of us. And I'm interested in your production function, as the economist would say.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so I'll answer in two ways. First is the work-life balance, and here I'm gonna borrow from Samina. And I'm gonna disagree with former people who have been in this call, who just say, oh, throw away your work-life balance, you're not, just work. I think that's a big mistake, I think, we all strive for work-life balance. It's unachievable, but some females who work, they say, well, you should just work and do nothing else. I think that's a mistake because, I love my work. So that's part of the secret. And I think it's part of all of us here. We love our work. I mean, it's like, it's very, sometimes, so I love my work. And so it's hard sometimes to stop working. And, if I want to finish something so this is kind of the challenge, but I also love my family, and I also love my hobbies and doing other things. So, just for everybody, male and female, because I know, many males are great fathers there who are striving to be, have a work-life balance, just keep working on it. Be disciplined about your time, try to be efficient, but, don't try to be a perfectionist. If you look at my nails closely, they're not perfect. So sometimes things have to give up, and so, just kind of prioritize. I would say just prioritize. Like you are not going to have a perfect one or the other. Like I don't feel like I'm perfect in either one, but I am, striving to do what I like. I feel so lucky to be able to do, I think, all of us have amazing jobs. So I just feel very, very fortunate for that. But really, really my secret is to work with people that are just amazing. So this is really, really, really my secret, to work for people like I started with Young Lee, who, challenged me, like when he was a doctoral student at Illinois, to, having Wei Shi asking to work with me. And I called Bob Hoskins on as like, doing my due diligence, should I work with him? And him proving to be superhuman and an amazing writer, and like really fantastic, to Junho Lee, who's a pleasure to work with. So working with fun people, and I hope sometime I have a chance to work with many of you. But I mean, I think this is when you work with people that you love, and that you have fun with them, and that that they're going to call you off. Like if I write a paragraph and it's like, why were you drinking? This makes no sense. And that when I write, they can tell me, this makes no sense. Or I can tell them and say, I don't like this. And, I think the way we write, we never write, one writes this, one write that. We all work on everything, like, so it's like, my Catalan and my Spanish co-authors, when I come in the summer, I work with them here. So I think, when you choose, this is kind of like, I mean, maybe people ask it in the chat, when you choose co-authors, is basically also like choosing also kind of a partner, like a partner, like choosing somebody that is going to be a long journey. And because there are no quick projects, right? There are really no quick projects. Don't let anybody lie you about that. So, usually with all my students, I always did one project, at least one, and then, because I felt like it was kind of my obligation to train them. And it was like, I was getting paid. And I always tell everybody, we get paid to help the doctoral students, to help the assistant professors. So, at Northeastern, I feel a responsibility and, for the assistant professors. And I know Samina feels the same. We hire them to be successful. If they don't succeed, it's our failure as well. So, so I guess, my secret is to work with really, really great people. And, people that compliment me, people that they're fun to work with, people that, yeah, I feel like I want to look good for them, not to disappoint them, and that I have complete trust. Yeah. So because
that's
you don't
perfect.
have trust in the people, yeah.
Thank you, Ruth.
No, that's excellent,
Yeah.
addressing Craig's question as well. And I think this highlights a question that Razvan raised as well. Razvan, would you like to elaborate on that, on this point, since you raised the collaboration part?
Yes, well, I think Ruth, in fact, answered, at least gave the answer that I was hoping for. But when someone looks at your CV, it takes a while to kind of count and read all of the papers that you wrote. And you see there many collaborators, but as well across quite a large variety of domains. Some scholarly domains, some are more similar, some are quite dissimilar. So I'm wondering, as you think at your career so far, at least, how did you go about not finding collaborators, because probably they found you, but deciding on which subject you would collaborate with, whom you would collaborate?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Razvan. So so I guess the personality of the co-author is kind of important, because like I want them, like if I say, oh, today I have a kid sick at home, I want them to understand that, like that I won't be working, and I don't want to feel guilty, or and Jiao is one of the best co-authors, by the way. Jiao and I did yeah, she's one of the best. And so a personality, somebody who is like completely reliable. And so this is, I guess a lot of things is, how I chose some of the co-authors, some of the early co-authors were my students, and then people that were as hungry as me to publish, these friends from the garden club, which they didn't, they didn't have tenure. It's like, okay, it's like we're gonna hang out. Then people from my reading club, even today I have a reading club, and we work. So I guess anything that has to do with something that I know, and then I just want to learn from other people. So sometimes it seems like it might be a little bit off, but I'm just kind of learning from them as well. But also everything kind of has corporate governance and CSR and some kind of international, and that's how that's kind of sometimes my students brought me to another area, and then I have to tell them, you are the expert. Like like with Junho, we're working on something that I don't know, because Hussein Leblivici was there and he was the discourses expert, and now he's not there, but we're continuing the project. So like I have to completely rely on him, and he is very, very good, so I can trust him. But this would be one of the projects that I have to rely more on him. But usually is I know enough, and I haven't been very, I haven't been, I guess, very good at just being, I have completely overcommitted, completely overcommitted. Yeah, I enjoy, like lately, at some point, I also enjoy doing these reviews, because I could just go blah, 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 like, so I had a few of the annals, a few of the JOM, and then I enjoy some teams. So I have the QCA team, like, so with Peter Fees and Vilmos and Joanna and Santi Fornari. So, those are my QCA people. Yeah, so I have the corporate governance people. I guess I haven't been very strategic, I haven't been very, I think, when I was at Illinois, they told me like that I was too dispersed, because I was publishing in, ethics journals, law reviews, but that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed like having different audiences. It's like, I would read the law reviews. It's like, wow, these people don't even know about these. Let's tell them, and it seems so natural, like, oh, like they don't know, the law scholars don't know about this. Let's tell them, or yeah. So that's kind of, it hasn't been very strategic. It has been more like kind of following my passion and working with people that I thought they were really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
So
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's not very
Thank you.
deliberate. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Again, great answer. Let's go to Richard. Richard, you had an interesting question about being a good colleague. Would you like to elaborate on that one?
Sure. Hi, Ruth. My question is, in your view, in your experience, what does it mean to be a good colleague? And who have you observed being an especially good colleague, and what made them so good?
Okay. So I guess, like it depends on each period. I guess it depends on each period of your career. You have to take different roles, I would say, right? So, so when you're a doctoral student, I think you need to focus on your dissertation. You need to tool up, learn as much methods, learn as much theory, try to connect with as many professors as possible, focus, but try to, so, I mean, I guess in that, but also like at that point you can be a good colleague with your colleagues, so I guess, when I started my PhD, my English was not very good. And Theda Scotchpole had a huge problem with my accent because I didn't pronounce tomato properly because I did not sound American. So, I kind of speak in a different way, like sounding very American because I had to train myself. But so my colleagues, my PhD colleagues would teach me how to pronounce properly, which, I mean, I never I don't feel authentic if I talk like that. But so, you could be a good colleague for your PhD friends. Then when you are when you're an assistant professor, I think you can also be a good colleague by supporting your cohort, right? Supporting your cohort, doing what you need to do. And I guess the biggest kind of elephant in the room is the politics, because the politics can be a rabbit hole, okay? And also in academia, there can be people in every department. There can be people who are, maybe more, and I hope it's not me, but they can be more egomaniac, who need some babysitting, or who need more, he need more, I mean, I guess the shortcut is, ass kissing or more. So, try, so I would say for junior people, try not to get into that game. Try not to get into that game at all. And, and I think this is something that I learned, early on at Illinois, that, Illinois had very, very little politics actually. But also I just decided I was just going to do my work and I would not get into politics. That was for people who had more time, because some, the resources were limited and they had to decide, okay, are we going to hire somebody who does A or B, So I just decided that at that point I would just, and this is the advice that, I gave maybe Zhao or other people, just focus on your work, enjoy your work, and engage even in your networking. I mean, I think this is super important about being a good colleague. And this is something that, with the PhD students at Illinois, I did. If you're gonna do networking, don't do the networking of going, and this is not gin tonic, going to the party, a academy party, haha, I think that's terrible networking. Do networking through content, do networking through organizing a panel at academy, do networking, that's how you have. And that's how it's being a good citizen, because you help your university by being out there, and you help yourself, and you network through content, not through, I mean, I don't know, because I think many young assistant professors might think that networking is oh, I know this, I know that, but if you don't know the people through their work, I think that's not being a good citizen. How are you a good citizen, right? You're asking me that. So, I think when I was at Illinois, I tried to, do my work. I tried to, be a good citizen and doing my share of service. But I try to stay away from politics. Then when you are more senior, then you have to be more involved, you have to be more involved in different capacities. And, I guess at the end, when I was at Illinois, I was definitely an institutional builder, because it was my role, to do more institutional builder, for cyber, for, the doctoral students. And then when I moved to Northeastern, I mean, I asked the dean, what do you want my role to be? How can I contribute? And I'm, how, I don't want to be here somebody just publishing. I mean, I would feel like that I'm taking advantage of the system. I get paid to do more than publishing. So, you know, my dean and I, and now with the new dean, you know, we have conversation about how do you want me to contribute? You know, what should I do? And, you know, and I have a very clear role of what I should be doing. And, you know, what are my skills that maybe other people don't have, how I can contribute. So I think that's a good, you know, that's been like a good citizen. And, you know, the citizen can be, you know, a citizen beyond like your school, like if you get involved, you know, like if you get involved in SMS, or all of you who are really highly involved in STR, you know, that's being a citizen. That's being an incredible citizen, you know, like committing and making, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hope you're, yeah, it's a wonderful answer, Ruth. I'll raise a quick question on behalf of myself that Asim echoed as well. And it's a question that I think might be of particular interest to junior scholars and the PhDs. Relating to what you mentioned earlier about schools used to be wanting to hire purists. And I think, you know, the question would be, to what extent do you see this trend evolving, and what advice would you have for, especially junior colleagues who want to do more interdisciplinary type of work?
Yeah, I think now, you know, I would advise, and, you know, I try to do it myself. I would advise anybody to read outside, I mean, stay focused, but read outside your field, you know, like when you go into a topic, like really immerse yourself into that topic, like what the economists have said, what the sociologists, what the political scientists, the law people, like, you know, just, I mean, I get all these, I mean, this is the advantage of now, you know, we get all these indexes of all these journals, like I get the sociology ones, the political science, and I will not read all of them, but I'll set, you know, like some of them, I'll open the abstract, I'll read, you know, so read, and I'm reading more and more books lately, you know, because I think, you know, books, and when I used to teach PhD, we would also read books. So I would encourage people to do, basically to be interdisciplinary and to try to bring things from other disciplines, to read outside your discipline. I think that's very, very important. And this will come across when you write, when you talk to people. I think it will pay off. And it will really open your mind, and you'll know that you know nothing. You know, like the more you read, it's like, oh my God, like this is a huge field. Like how am I going to get there? But also talk to people, you know, talk to other people. This is why I have, you know, I have published with, you know, corporate people. I still continue to publish with corporate lawyers and with people who are, you know, hardcore strategy, and people who are more OB. Yeah.
No, perfect. And no, thanks for that. And in terms of positioning, you know, a junior scholar or PhD student positioning themselves in the market, how do you think they can do that with interdisciplinary type work versus the traditional, more boxed-in approach of disciplinary-based, you know, purist?
Yeah, maybe, you know, I think maybe now, like if you could position it in terms of the phenomena now that you're studying. I mean, I'm thinking aloud, but, you know, if you could position in terms of the phenomena, and, you know, and argue, and, you know, and have good arguments of why the phenomena is important, and why the phenomena, you know, like, you know, why the phenomena needs to be studied from, like, let's say artificial intelligence or climate change or innovation, you know, that we have at Northeastern a very strong group, you know, how it has to be studied from different points of view, OT, strategy, entrepreneurship, you know, family business, governance, you know. I think, like, if you can focus more on the phenomena, and then how different theories can help unpack some of the, you know, some of the puzzles within that phenomena, you know, as a way to advance the needle, to move the needle. I think that's, I mean, I'm just thinking for scholars, like, so basically, like, try to really kind of educate your audience. Why are you studying it, and why is it important? And then always relate it to others. You know, other people have to care. So related to, okay, Pitosh is, you know, like, you have done this, so, you know, this is relates, in this way it relates to you, in this way it relates to you, in this way it relates to you. So you and I can talk, you know, like, yeah. So that's kind of like how, because people don't like to listen to you. Like, I'm sorry that you have to listen to me today. But people like, like I'm very tempted to ask you. So, people, but wanna, you wanna have a conversation, right? Like that's what Min was doing, right? Like you wanna have a conversation, sorry. You wanna have a conversation, like, what do you think? I'm really curious. Tomorrow I'll definitely log in. Like, what do you think about the tension between US and China? So if you, as a doctoral student, can say, I study this, but this is important to you too. You who study non-market, this is important to you, So I think that connection, because people want to be connected, Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thanks so much. It's very, very good advice. Mindful of the time, I'll pass the word to Samina, who I think has some fun questions on deck, please.
Thanks, Peter. So Ruth, I love to ask some random fun questions to all of our scholars. So this is kind of rapid fire, okay? So what's your favorite dessert?
Okay, so I guess my favorite dessert is, I guess pavlova, which I tried for the first time in Australia, in the Qantas Lounge, pavlova, which is a merengue, and then on top of it, it has like berries and kiwi and mango. But if we don't, so my children make pavlova, and I torture them to make pavlova for my birthday. But if you cannot have pavlova, which is, merengue, you can look it up, it's not that hard. Then I would say like, wild strawberries, like little strawberries with, whipped cream or, or macadamia ice cream. I would say that's my.
Yum.
Yeah,
okay.
dessert.
I've actually never had pavlova, so I'm going to have to try.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you've traveled the world. What is one of your favorite cities, or the favorite city?
Okay, so I have to say Barcelona, but I have, I really like the chaotic cities. So, I like Copenhagen because it's very organized. In winter, it has all the lights. But I like very busy cities like Seoul. I like Seoul because it has a history of the Americans being there, of the, I like Mexico City because it has like all this history of the Aztecs and all the Spanish. I like Jakarta. I like this, I like London because it's such a melting pot. I like these, but I like these, lately, all the cities that in Asia, in Southeast Asia, I love this city, but I also love Mexico City. But, Seoul, I particularly like it because it's so cutting edge, so vibrant. Tokyo is also interesting, but I would say Seoul is, and I haven't been to Taiwan, it's in my list.
All right, so if you could go on sabbatical anywhere right now, where would you go?
So I am thinking New Zealand or Melbourne.
I'll go with you to New Zealand. That sounds great.
Yeah, I'm thinking New Zealand. It might happen.
Do you prefer mountains or ocean?
I think I prefer mountains with lakes.
Oh, even though Barcelona is by the ocean. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but we have in the north, we have the Costa Brava, so it has like the mountains and the sea. Yeah.
If you had a choice and someone said to give you a free Ferrari or a pickup truck, which one would you take and why?
I would pick up a pickup truck for sure. I once bought a pickup truck for $1, and I drove from Oklahoma to Champaign-Urbana, and it's a lot more useful. I can put my trash, my Christmas tree. I have a pickup truck still at Urbana because I left it there in the Vermont Avenue. So I couldn't take it; it was too old. But I have a pickup Ford Ranger 1992, which is a community truck. I donated it. So the only thing is like if you use it, either a bottle of wine in the car, full and unopened, or a full tank. So everybody would use it. So yeah, I have a Ford Ranger pickup truck, red.
What would your husband say is your worst and best quality?
Wow.
And
maybe,
I can check with John later to see if this matches up.
I honestly I don't know what the best would be, honestly. Maybe I'm a good cook, so I would say, yeah. So maybe like I love cooking. And I guess, so that's the best thing. The worst thing is that I grew up with a lot of people around me, a lot of people. So my worst quality is that I always have a lot of people in my house because my fridge is always full with things that I cook, flan and things. So I always have a lot of people, and he's like, who is coming? So he is, you know, he wants warning, and it's like, I'm not gonna ask him because, you know, he will say, oh, another day, you know, because he grew up in Oklahoma in the middle of nowhere without any neighbors. So I grew up with a lot of people, a big Spanish family. So I guess, you know, yeah, so I guess that's probably my worst quality. I don't check with him. I just kind of announce. But he also enjoys. I think he enjoys.
So do you have any gardening skills? Did you pick up from the folks at Illinois in the gardening club?
Yeah, so I'm actually very active in Easty Farm. You can look it up. It's East Boston. It's a non-for-profit organization in East Boston for Hispanics, and these are people who speak no English. So we go in this, it's a non-for-profit organization. We go in these empty lots, which actually are full of nasty stuff, you know, like, you know, because drug addicts go there, and we turn them into beautiful vegetable gardens with flowers. And, you know, basically Hispanic people, mostly Central Americans, they grew, they own, so these are lots given by people. And so we use our Spanish to help them raise the vegetables. They get the vegetables, and then the leftovers, they go to the food bank. So yeah, I think they were very impressed when they contacted me for my Spanish, and then they realized that actually when I grew up, because I kind of grew up in a, you know, like in a very hippie place, I did a lot of real gardening, you know, things that we would eat. So yeah, I am an expert in compost if any of you ever needs.
I need your help. Okay.
So yeah, like I do that in Boston. We are involved with this. They are urban farms basically for, you know. People,
so
yeah.
Other than the gardening, you're so busy, you do so much. What do you do to unwind and relax?
So, you know, like I cook a lot. I have people over. I like to do social things because, you know, I feel like our work, so I don't go a lot to the movies. I do a little bit of reading, but, you know, I mostly, you know, I love the mountains, so I go a lot on hikes. I love outdoor sports. I love the cold, the heat. I love extreme things. So you know, long bike rides, skiing, you know, sailing here in Barcelona, tennis, but, you know, hikes, you know, like just being out. Like I love outdoors and with people, you know, not alone, with people. So yeah, so like, you know, we did the Camino de Santiago, and we did you know, we did big, many days hikes, you know, like in the Machu Picchu and these kind of things. So that's what I like to do.
I can give, I'm sure John would say many amazing best qualities about you, Ruth. So I'm going to throw one out as a colleague, which is you are giving of your time, as is indicative of this session, and always kind of positive. You radiate positivity, which I think we all appreciate as colleagues and people who you mentor and who we look up to you. So thank you on behalf of the division for making the time to do this. And I'm going to turn it over to Pitosh and Chao for final words.
Right, and
well,
I just
pass on to Jiang.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Samina. I think really thank you so much. Our heartfelt thanks to you, Ruth, to sharing the wisdom, and more importantly, I think your warmth and sincerity just transpires even if we're in this virtual environment. So thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great time in Spain.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Young.
Bye, Ruth. Hope to see you sometime, Pitosh.
Yes, Young, like, you know, as soon as we can travel
it's a small
again.
world, right?
It is so small, and it's crazy, like, you know, so please, as soon as you can, you know, come over to Melbourne, you know, and catch up properly.
I still have been in contact with Peter Lish.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, UQ. Yeah, correct.
Elizabeth
retiring.
And her husband. They are in New Zealand right now. Yeah.
Correct. Now this we have it's Australia's funny like that. We have all these random amazing scholars all over the place.
So
the lifestyle is amazing.
About their connections down under.
Yes.
Yes.
So I talked to you tomorrow, Ming-Jae, another time.
Oh, good. No, maybe we can spend a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Ruth, thank you so much, for your insight. And actually, one of my boys know the Spanish history language better than Chinese. And the Chinese.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So he is very much into the whole, so the people like Elizabeth, is very much part of the dinner conversation, the Queen.
Oh, wow, the culture, yeah.
The
but
culture.
Chinese are the same. They're so similar.
Oh, yes, right.
My kids have done 7 years of Chinese. So, because we live in Singapore. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm reading a lot of Chinese literature.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, and maybe Yong.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Bye, Yongli. Bye.
Yeah, I don't think we ever met.
Visit us sometime, Ruth.
No.
So you're in Melbourne, right? Yeah, I don't think we ever met.
Pitash.
Oh, sorry.
Monash, right?
Yeah, I'm at Monash.
Ming-Jae Chen.
Bye, Ruth. Yeah, nice to meet you, Ming-Jae.
Likewise.
It's I'll probably miss your session because. Sorry?
Yeah, they have to close this.
Actually, given you are going to miss the session, I think the question you posed to Ruth, and I want to share with you. I have a paper published in 2009 or 2010, which I very much used the 2x2 metric to explain the positioning. So the one dimension is a topic, and it's a research topic. So we can have a choice between focus and diverse, and then another dimension is theory / methodology, and also you can one can have a focus and diverse. So I think that the idea I think Ruth's trying to say is that you can fix your topic, and I won't use a phenomenon. I will use topic. So which is more abstract than the phenomenon, and so you can choose the focus topic, but can use multiple methods and using multiple theories to study the same topic, or you can apply the one theory or one method that you know so well to study many topics. So I think that very much kind of quote the strategic choice perspective, and people like Gautam Ahuja and thought that was the best framework he learned in the doctor program.
Okay, that's great to know. I think they had.
So I think it was published in Asian Pacific Journal of Management, something like that. And I used that simple framework to help and to give. And literally, you can plot yourself where you are. And as a strategy person, I will avoid the focus topic and the focus method / theory, or diverse topics, diverse theories, and diverse methods. Those two are not a good kind of advice for junior people.
I see.
So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for your patience, Pitash.
Ming-Jae,
I think your email. Please get back to me. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, they have to close it. Otherwise, they have to wait for us, Ming-Jae.
Okay. Yong, I think maybe I'll send you a reply for the question you raised.
Okay, sure.
I'm completely open, but I think perhaps it would be good that you and Jane lead the discussion, and then I can work with you, help on the side,
Okay.
and then I can do the wrap up. You know.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Good.
Got you.
So whatever you want me to do would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are talking about another thing, Prakash.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
all
sorry
good.
about that, Prakash.
It's part of the community. It's all good.
And
See
I
you
look
all.
forward to seeing you sometime down under.
We'll catch up. We'll do that in Melbourne for sure.
Okay.
Bye bye.